Hello everyone, and thank you all for joining the Legal Navigator webinar. Today we have an insightful session ahead as we delve into the world of legal careers, focusing specifically on CLC technician roles in conveyancing and probate for the Level 4 diploma. I am your host, Rebecca, the legal advisor for Law Training Centre, and I'm joined by two wonderful, amazing speakers today. It would be great if you both can introduce yourself to our audience. I'll just pass it over to you guys.
Claire, would you like to begin?
Yes, I'm happy to. I'm Claire Richardson, so I'm Deputy Director of Licensing and Authorisations at the CLC, which broadly means I'm responsible for everything that comes into regulation. So that's lawyers and practices, and everything that exits regulation. And that obviously includes the academic and work experience components of qualifying to be a CLC lawyer.
Brilliant. Thank you, Claire.
My name is Stephen Murray. I am a tutor with Law Training Centre, and I am the qualification manager who has the pleasure of managing all of the CLC learners and a number of other legal qualifications that Law Training Centre deliver.
Brilliant. Thank you both. So just to give you an overview of what's going to happen today, I'm just going to give you a background of Law Training Centre. And I'll pass you on to our wonderful presenter, Stephen, who will give you insights into CLC technicians. And then we'll hear from our guest speakers. If time permits, we will go through a Q&A session. So just a bit of a background about Law Training Centre. So for those who are not familiar with us, we are a leading accredited specialist provider for legal qualifications in the United Kingdom. Our passion lies in opening up and providing support for alternative pathways into the legal profession, such as for the CILEX for the CPQ route, SQE for solicitors, or for those looking to becoming paralegals, NAP qualifications, just to name a few. All our courses are delivered online, making them accessible worldwide, and they're designed to be flexible, self-paced, and guided by expert tutors and practitioners in the field. However, as mentioned earlier, we will be focusing just specifically on the CLC pathway. So I'm now going to pass you on to Stephen, who's going to share further insights on this route.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rebecca. And again, it's great to be with you this evening. Could we move on to the next presentation, please? Thank you. We can begin with a very broad introduction to the CLC probate and conveyancing technician at level 4. At this part of our presentation this evening, we are stressing the importance of their role. Let's start with probate. Probate technicians are highly skilled individuals in their daily role. What do they do? Well, they'll be working jointly with probate lawyers to undertake what's called administration of an estate. Now, this is where the property and other matters are dealt with after someone has, regrettably, passed away. They also work with clients and other probate lawyers as necessary. It's a busy, rewarding, and very responsible position. Probate technicians are very knowledgeable in the law that applies after a person has died when their personal and financial matters need to be dealt with. It's a very involving job role, as I've said. It is demanding, and there are challenges, not only in understanding and applying the law that must be followed, but also dealing with any person who's been perhaps appointed as a deceased's personal representative. Ultimately, you, as a probate technician, will be assisting in ensuring that everything is done according to the law. Now, turning to our colleagues who are conveyancing technicians. These are also essential colleagues in the legal sector. A conveyancing technician is skilled in the complex area of property law and the law that applies to property purchases, property sales, and other related matters. They're responsible for managing their own appropriate caseloads and working closely with conveyancers and solicitors. Both in the conveyancing and probate role, you're going to be assisting in the investigation of legal issues and providing critical legal support for clients and colleagues alike. Probate and conveyancing technicians are team players. They understand their pivotal role within their specialist teams, and they are recognised across the sector. They are not administrators. They are very skilled professionals who are delivering first-rate legal support to their colleagues in a very high-paced role. Could you move on to the next presentation, please, Rebecca? Thank you. A level 4 technician can be the first step in starting your career. It's available straight from school, and it's immensely achievable, especially when you receive the depth of coaching and the support that is available, for example, through Law Training Centre and our tutors. Could we have the next presentation, please? Probate and conveyancing studies do share some common subject areas, and you can see them here on this presentation slide. This outlines the areas of knowledge and skills that you will cover and become successful in. We see there the English legal system. Briefly, that's the structure and personnel of our courts and tribunals. We also see the law of contract, the foundation law that allows business matters to be enforceable and enforced through the courts where necessary. It's an incredibly important and core area of law that you'll study. We also see land law. This is the historical basis of how land and property has become established as legal rights. And then we move into the specialisms. We see standard conveyancing transactions. Now, this is the practical hands-on approach to the law that deals with property and land interests for a client. We see also the law of wills, succession, and the grants of representation. This is the administration, the conclusion, and distribution of a deceased property and their possessions. Lastly, we see understanding accounting procedures for either probate or conveyancing transactions, and it depends on what pathway you'll be taking. What this does briefly is we are learning and we become able to understand the necessary steps to account for client and office money, including topics such as anti-money laundering legislation. Level 4 is home assignment based for all subjects, except for accounting. Accounting is an online exam, but one which you will be thoroughly prepared for. So, for all but one subject, you will have all of your materials at hand and you'll undertake the assignment activities at home in your own time. Now, you will need to submit them by a date, but that will be made very clear to you and you'll be able to submit that work with no difficulty. Having such an introductory method to your first studies for your legal career and using the extensive support provided by, again, for example, our Law Training Centre tutors, means that your determination and your serious intentions to start a career will be turned into the success that you are seeking. Can I have the next presentation slide, please? Thank you. This is where we come to practical work experience. Now, we will, I'm sure, be speaking with our guest presenter, Claire from CLC, on this later and in more detail. But as a very brief outline just now, when the time comes and the required exams have been taken, to apply for a first or what we call a dual or cross-qualifying CLC license, we need to demonstrate that we've obtained a minimum of 1,200 hours of supervised qualifying work experience, and that work experience meets all of CLC's requirements as your regulator. Any candidate seeking to apply for a CLC license needs to complete what's known as a Statement of Practical Experience, or the SOPE. And we'll talk about that, hopefully, in a little bit more detail soon. Can I have the next presentation slide, please? So, why become a CLC technician? We've touched on aspects of the roles previously, but we can continue here. And what I'd like to do is emphasize that you will open up a really rewarding and purposeful career. One in which your skills and your critical role is recognized not only by your colleagues, but by the whole legal sector. It's a role that can fulfill your ambitions of becoming a recognized legal professional in your own right. The roles do sound demanding, and the work does carry a great degree of responsibility. Do you have what it takes? I can answer that for you now. Yes, you do. And you might have more of the key attributes needed already, and you haven't even yet started putting them into practice. What you're going to be doing is demonstrating a determination to succeed, a willingness to work towards successful outcomes with colleagues in a busy environment. You'll be focused on achieving a professional career for yourself. You'll be interested in working as part of a professionally and highly motivated team, but also working on your own where appropriate. You'll be reviewing and critically analysing complex documents, solving problems and reaching solutions and conclusions that will meet the needs of your client. It is a position of responsibility, a real purposeful role, and one that you can achieve. There is, of course, the opportunity to progress from level 4 onto level 6, and that's where you'll be taking your specialist knowledge further. You'll be taking a more advanced study of the law and looking at procedures that will see you ultimately achieving more and more on your own with less supervision and managing your own appropriate caseloads. Progressing from level 4 onto the level 6 diploma means you'll be working towards becoming a licensed conveyancer or probate practitioner. You'd be then taking on another level of responsibility and, importantly, delivering further legal services for your clients. Rebecca, that pretty much concludes my contribution for the moment, so I'll hand back to you and to our guest. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephen. That's quite a lot to unpack there. Thank you. So, Claire, I was wondering if we could just start off by just asking whether you could just elaborate a bit more on what the practical work experience entails for CLC technicians. So what specific activities are considered as part of this experience?
I think it might be helpful if I kick off with a little bit about CLC, because CLC is a specialist regulator. We're a pure regulator. So we provide the licensing functions for those licenses to practice in those specialist areas. So whereas a solicitor is very much a generalist practitioner, for property and probate, CLC lawyers are specialists. And one of the reasons we introduced the conveyancing technician level is that we were very mindful that when somebody's entering into a career in law, firstly, they might think, I should have done a law degree, and actually you don't need to have done a law degree. Secondly, they might think, actually, perhaps I'm not academic enough to do this. And that's why we've introduced those assignment-based assessments for the level 4, because what we really think is important are the legal research and team working skills that you develop through doing those assignments. You will speak to colleagues, you will speak to supervisors, you will do research online, you'll look through books. You know, all of that is the sort of activity that you will do as a lawyer as well. So they are really fantastic skills for you in your professional capacity as you develop into law, but also for your employer and for your clients too. I think the other important thing to say about property and probate law is that they are actually very people-centered areas of law. And you will find that if you enjoy working with people, then you'll enjoy these areas of law. And quite often I think about the conveyancing technician as somebody who likes working in a faster paced environment, perhaps has really good natural multitasking skills, is a natural project manager, that sort of person. And then with the probate, maybe you're slightly more empathetic, you're a little bit more of a problem solver, but they are fantastic skills that employers are looking for. So when we introduced the conveyancing technician step, it wasn't entirely new. It was that the technician level qualification in the level 4 diploma is actually was the existing foundation level for becoming a lawyer, so a CLC lawyer at level 6. However, what we recognised with our work with employers is at that point, they were struggling to find people through the paralegal route that they could really determine at the point of interview had exactly the specialist skills in those key areas of law that they needed them to have in order to deploy them on a sort of quite a standard caseload of matters, whether they were conveyancing transactions or probate transactions. And so we also felt that it was an appropriate point in people's development for them to finish study, take a breath, get some work experience. You know, perhaps they probably even secure slightly better employment terms at that point because they've got that professional status that they can take with them before progressing on into level 6. And we see that happen quite a lot. And I think it's a really good stepping off point, and particularly a very good employability point for employers especially, and for applicants into new positions, because the employer knows exactly that you've covered the technical parts of probate practice and conveyancing practice, but very importantly, you've covered the accounting and billing parts, which not all other paralegal type level courses cover in such detail. And that's a huge benefit, I think, from an employer's point of view. So that gives you some context as to why we think it's really important, and it's really encouraging people to come through who may not necessarily have done legal study before, perhaps might have left school, worked in conveyancing, but want to formalise what they've learned and bring the theory to their practical experience. And so that's why hopefully those assessment focused, the assignment assessments really encourage people back into study who might otherwise been put off by very large exams.
Thank you. That was really insightful to just know the foundations of why, the pathway is the way it is. But more particularly, it would be really good to just find out just information just about the practical work experience elements for those who are currently considering this route or already on the pathway. If you could just elaborate what exactly this entails when it comes to completing that element, as well as obviously alongside the qualification itself.
So those that are completing the level 4 and are looking to become a conveyancing technician will complete a statement of work experience. That's actually slightly different to the document that you just displayed. The document just displayed is quite rightly the endpoint work experience after you've completed level 6. If you're going to stop and pause your studies and become a technician, then you complete the statement of work experience. And that really looks to establish through supervision with an authorised person. And when we're referring to an authorised person, what we actually mean is either another licensed conveyancer, a licensed probate practitioner, or a solicitor. Somebody is supervising your work and competence in some key areas of administration that support, and I don't say administration and diminish what you're doing. Actually, it's very high technical level administration. You're providing really key support to that legal person, and you're going to have an awful lot of frontline contact with clients. So your performance is really important to your employer and to your business and the outcome of that legal service. But there are still procedural elements in any transaction, and you're going to be supporting in those procedural elements. And that supervisor is going to be looking at how you're doing that work, supporting you through that over a period of 6 months for the statement of practical work experience, and then signing that off. So the key thing at level 4, which is slightly different to when you're looking to complete at level 6, is that the restrictions around where you can get that work experience are slightly more flexible. You can work in less regulated environments. We think it's a good idea that you're working in a regulated business, so a law firm regulated by the SRA or by the CLC. But equally, it's quite possible you could be working for a developer, you might be working in a local authority, you could be working for the co-op, for example, in their probate department. So you could be working in other areas, but there's a clear distinction between, is the business I'm working in offering services directly to the public, and therefore it's a regulated body, or is my employer actually the only client? So I'm working in an in-house environment. And that's two very clear distinctions about the types of businesses that we look for people to gain their work experience in. Once you've had that signed off, typically we would expect you to collect that 6 months experience towards the end of your studies. But there's nothing to stop you starting, and it's not really about completing the activities, it's about being determined and evaluated by your supervisor as competent in those activities, and for them to sign them off and they verify that. Then you would submit your application along with that SOWE with your ID documentation and your academic certificates, and then we provide you with a certificate of competence through the technician certificate.
Great. Thank you so much, Claire. Just one part to clarify, because I'm sure a lot of people might be thinking this. Can the work experience be signed off retrospectively, like before you even begin your level 4 studies? So if you've
No,
been working, okay.
no. We really would expect you, even if you've got some experience in the sector, we really would expect you to get through that theoretical training. But also, your training provider is going to bring an awful lot of opportunity for you to really expand your legal knowledge. And so we would want you to bring both parts, the academic and the practical experience, and bring them both. Because without that academic involvement with the training provider, actually some of the questions and the interaction and the legal research that you're going to carry out later on will not be as fulfilling. It won't be as rounded. And so you do need both parts to be able to provide you with competence. It does need both things.
Great. Could you just share more information on the technician register? Just what exactly it is and how it works and the sort of benefits of, if one was to register through there?
So at the moment, the CLC's technician is register is that you register with us as having completed those competencies, the academic and the occupational experience, and we provide you with a certificate. Then that certificate is an addition to your academic, certificate from SQA, your training provider. We are thinking over the next little while that we're going to make that much more of a searchable public directory. We think that that would be helpful. Now, you need to remember that conveyancing technicians or probate technicians are not regulated individuals by the CLC. And that's why we're recognising your competence through the certificate. It is not a licence. That only happens at level 6. So it is a different thing from our public register, which is a statutory obligation for CLC lawyers. But we are thinking of putting in place a directory which we think would be helpful for prospective employers to search, for example, or equally other professionals validating you, acting on the other side in exactly the same way that they may validate a lawyer.
So could you just talk to the actual process of registering? Like, is it just an application form you fill out online, or could you just give the specific?
It's free of charge. There's an application, and at that point we're not doing the full level of screening that we would do when you make an application for a license, which would include all sorts of sanctions and criminality checks. But we are asking you to complete your information, tell us about you, provide evidence of that academic attainment, and then provide evidence from your employer that you've completed those practical components in the work experience. And then we put you on the register. When people qualify as licensed conveyancers, they obviously drop off of that register because they then go onto the statutory register.
Makes sense. Does this same process apply to people who are looking to study this qualification overseas?
Not quite, because you can't just be overseas in that sense. There's nothing stopping you studying. You can deal with the academic part of qualifying. You can study anywhere in the world if your training provider can facilitate that for you. However, the practical experience must be obtained in an organisation that is based in England and Wales and that is doing transactions in England and Wales, whether they're in probate or conveyancing. So there are some specific rules around that, because this isn't a license. This is just recognition of your progression through the profession, some status there. But you can't just practice. So even a licensed conveyancer or a licensed probate practitioner, they can't, if they're living in Germany, they can't practice probate law or property law in Germany because they are not licensed in that jurisdiction. So you are limited to transactions that are in England and Wales, and you do need to be working with an organisation that's regulated by a body in England and Wales. So typically the CLC or the SRA. At the level 4, again, you've still got that more flexibility around being within an in-house environment, but you wouldn't be able to cover off that occupation experience without that employment. And equally, you still need to have the supervising lawyer being an authorised person in England and Wales. So again, we're bringing it all back to English common law. That's what you're intending to practice. That's what you need to be practicing. And that's what you should be working on when you're doing your occupation experience.
Brilliant. Thanks, Claire. But just to clarify a bit further, if you've got a law firm overseas that deals with laws pertaining to England and Wales, and they deal with obviously conveyancing, can that still apply, or do they have to physically be in England and Wales? So if the law
No,
firm is based on English and Welsh law, would that be fine for their work
it
experience?
needs
I
to
know.
be, and this is on the CLC website under CLC trainee lawyers, and you can look at qualifying outside of England and Wales, and it will really clearly specify. It needs to be a law firm that is regulated by a statutory regulator in England and Wales. It needs to have its main office, because that's a requirement of being regulated in England and Wales, within England and Wales. And the work that you are doing for that business, although it may be doing other work in other departments, but the work you are doing in that business based on transactions that pertain to something happening in England and Wales. It is an English or Welsh property transaction. It is an English or Welsh estate. So it's quite clear you can't be doing other types of work that wouldn't count. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thanks, Claire. And pretty much just lastly on my end, how does the CLC Technician Register accommodate those who wish to pursue entrepreneurship? Like, can CLC technicians be self-employed or establish their own sort of business, or are they required to operate solely under a CLC regulated firm?
Well, CLC encourage entrepreneurship. CLC route to qualified individuals, so as a CLC license holder, is one way of becoming a sole practitioner. So a single lawyer that owns their own legal practice. However, technician level is probably very early on in your legal career to be thinking about that. But you have to start there. You have to have it as an ambition, but it's still very early on. We would expect a qualified lawyer, so someone holding a CLC license, to have 4 years post-qualifying experience before they would make any approach to the CLC to set up their own law firm. There's lots of reasons around that, in part because you can't really act into the fullness of the position until you have the license. You can't build that level of competence until you are the license holder. You really do need to build experience around lots of different types of transactions, but also how to operate a business and how to understand to apply compliance. So not only on the post-qualifying experience are we looking for, have you had a leadership role? Have you been in possibly a management role? We're really also looking for where you've had experience or exposure to looking at designing policies and procedures, implementing controls. You are the ultimate person in charge of your money laundering, anti-money laundering, your AML procedures, your vulnerable clients. So it's quite a jump, and even an experienced fee earner is not necessarily going to segue without some preparation into being a sole practitioner.
Brilliant. Thanks for that, Claire. Thank you for listening to the Legal Navigator podcast. If you have any questions or need more information, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can send us an email at info@ltckent.co.uk or visit our website at ltckent.co.uk. Until next time, stay tuned for more episodes.